Hello, this is Dylan, and this is the Truth Speaks Network. Today is a special interview with a man who actually built the Haarp Towers in Alaska, Billy Hayes. Billy, are you with us?
I'm here.
And I'm also joined by my co-host, Chris.
Yeah, right here.
So, Billy, the first question I wanted to ask you, for the people who are uneducated about the Haarp system, what is it?
Okay, it's known as high altitude aurora uh, project. You're going to have to help me out. I just had a zinger go through my head.
Let me check.
It is basically speaking, it is a low frequency ELF transmitter located in Tacoma, Alaska, which was devised principally in the very beginning by ARCO, Atlantic Richfield Company, an oil company that was utilized in the very beginning as a tomographic instrument for locating reservations of natural minerals beneath the Earth's surface. Some of the things that came out of that project with Atlantic Richfield Company were utilized by the U.S. Navy and U.S. Air Force in submitting for principles of the now analog Haarp system, which was brought into use under the request of President Ronald Reagan to be utilized as a Star Wars weapon.
Which Star Wars is an operation from the 80s to develop weaponry to defend ourselves, I believe.
That's affirmative. In the experimentations that came out of that, for every experiment they committed to, they came up with 10 other items to experiment with. It became an experiment of experiments, which it still is. I mean, it's still in stages of experimentation, but things have changed on Haarp. It is no longer an analog system. They have taken down the analog system, and they now have devised all Haarp systems under another pretense, another project that will be digitized.
And
is that enough?
Yes, and two of the capabilities that it is used for, based on my understanding, is weather manipulation, which is already confirmed by them. They admit it. And subsequently an extension of MK Ultra, which was a CIA op to learn how to manipulate the mind.
Yeah, they used MK Ultra project to follow on things such as mind control, mood presentation. See, what's the word I'm looking for? Suggestive thoughts, able to design a simulated situation that would make you think about certain things, play certain music through your head and give you a funny feeling without you actually hearing it.
And that's the interesting thing. You don't even know what's going on.
I mean, it's ghastly to think that many people that are out there that have mental problems, or at least thought they had mental problems, were actually under the guise of what was going on with Haarp. because there's many people that are in tune with some of the frequencies that were being used, and they thought they were going nuts. They thought, they were hearing people talk to them, yet other people around them didn't hear them. So.
And one of the most noteworthy people involved with it on record is James Holmes, the Colorado movie theater shooter. If I'm not mistaken, he was one of the lead scientists.
Well, I don't know how to go there, and I have no persuasions with what happened at Aurora, Colorado. I mean, I'm like you. I've read about it. I tried to research on it, but I always come up with either dead-end walls or misinformation.
It's hard to research that event, but one thing that that will always stick with me, I went and researched him himself, and I watched a documentary where he talked about the mind and how frequencies manipulate the mind. And I thought, no way, this is real, but I dug into it and it was. It's the only it's the only solid information I could ever find.
Well, let me state this. When I was young, I got involved with electronics at Eglin Air Force Base through the besiegement of getting in trouble. I was a troubled kid, and I got sent away to a school for boys. And that school was called the Dozier School for Boys, just outside Marianna, Florida. And I became what they call one of the White House boys. We went through a detention there that put us in way of harm's way. We were beaten. We were molested. We were threatened. And some of us even had to go out and dig graves that night and then lay in them all night long with the coercion that we were going to wind up there. And we would have to stay there until sunlight arose and we could go back to the barracks. And the reason they call it the White House Boys is because the big house on the area was White House. Everything else was more or less a shack or barracks. But they dug up some 51 bodies this last year at Dozier School for Boys in Florida. And it's a matter of just look it up. I mean, anybody can look it up. But that's how they profiled many of us youngsters into a program where we were trained without us realizing that we were part of a cooperative system into the government. And that's also where I started working on the first Haarp projects, was through that. Was the school that I went to afterwards had arranged it for us to get special classes at Eglin Air Force Base and up north at Langley. And most of us cannot remember what happened to us at Langley. It was a matter that it's not part of our minds anymore. It's like a blank space. We were trained without our knowledge. We were compartmentalized to the point that there are certain areas of our memory that has been hard to reach. It's all there, but it's not available upon reaching up there and trying to remember something. But in 1962, I assisted with tuning up the C6 site at Eglin Air Force Base, which was the largest radar system in the world. It was a paraphased antenna system with multiples of 3,600 antennas within its scope. And each one of those antennas had to be tuned with a file to an exact frequency. And I was one of the smaller kids back then that could climb up and do such. After that, I became part of the construction crew after there was an incident at C6 in 62, 63, and the system burnt to the ground. And we had to assist in the rebuild of that system, which privileged me to be part of the construction teams and start an education into the electronic worlds of the government.
I see.
Go ahead.
When you were part of the construction crew, you had mentioned off air that you were cut and burned. But by what happened? Or was that during the experiments?
On fire-up, on tune-ups of these systems, both Haarp and the Space Fence. Space Fence was a system devised by Raytheon. And during those fire-ups, we would be in the area doing tune-ups. They'd fire it up, see a standing wave, and we'd have to go around with a wand and tap each one of these antennas to find out which antenna was giving the RF feedback and the standing wave. When it was found, we'd have to either file it or solder an additional length of solder onto it to extend the heights of it, to change the wavelengths of that antenna. It was that critical. In that process, we received many, many, many burns. This was not only with C6, but also with all the Haarp antenna systems around the world, which there was more than 200 different Haarp-affiliated stations around the world. Some of them transmit, some of them receive, some pass data, some of them were command centers. All of them had links to NASA. In fact, all NASA sites are considered Haarp-affiliated stations. You need more?
Just a little. If you can, just a little bit. I wanted to segue into something. Actually, you said off air that you were a victim of MK Ultra. Is that correct?
Yeah, our training at Langley and other schools in the north that most of us could not remember were all part of the MK Ultra clandestine plan. We were into the electronic part of it, and we were seduced with drugs that which included LSD. It was a suggestive matter. They were experimenting with our minds, with our bodies, trying to find a way to cleanse our minds of certain things, to compartmentalize certain areas that they didn't want us to remember, compartmentalize some of the people we had us associated with. They made it work very well, because until years later there were several of us who had been together as nearly man and wife that we didn't recognize each other until just recent years. Little bits and pieces started falling back in place as these compartments start breaking down. And it was through the production of us, some of us getting internet, that we started seeking out some of these questions that had been raised in our own minds, some of these faces that we had keep seeing, some of these names that keep on clicking through that had no reason. And as for me, I was stuck on the name Kathy O'Brien, a.k.a. Kathy Black, who was also a victim of MK Ultra. And as it turned out, that she and I had a baby together by the name of Sarah. And I didn't know about it until just a couple years ago. And like Kathy, some of these things start coming back. And every time there's a piece that comes back, something keys up our memories that replaces something that was in our heads. And it's like a dream state. You know, you dream about something and you wonder if it's real. Well, we started attaching some of these questionable dream states to the internet and finding out other people who were like us. And over the last decade, we have came together and organized that we were all part of this MK Ultra profile at Eglin Air Force Base and at Langley.
Mm-hmm. And
as were many others that came after us.
And do you remember at all what they did and what it was like?
Vaguely. Vaguely, I remember sitting in classrooms. Vaguely, I remember going through shock therapies. Vaguely, I remember going on trips that I couldn't understand. It was like a super dream. When things you were seeing made noises without being there. When you heard something, you saw colors, which as we grew older, we found out that was LSD trips. But there was lapses in our memories of exactly what happened. It's like being on too many halcyons overnight and not sleeping, that you don't remember for years what happened. And then all of a sudden, 1 year pops in your head, oh my gosh, I remember doing that. I was out on the front lawn talking to ants. It took me 8 hours to get back from the mailbox.
So they used drugs and electrocution to put subliminal messages into your mind?
Electroshock therapies, yes.
How do they utilize that, though?
I do remember some portions of the electroshock therapy where they would bring us in on a table, put like hay tongs over top our head, and then you would see the light. It would just, and you wouldn't remember anything for days. And in fact, for weeks at a time, there was periods of time when you remembered nothing. And they were calling it mind cleansing.
That's incredible.
And then they would, after you start getting memory back, then they introduce you to the drugs.
And can I ask another question really fast?
Yes.
Why did you guys stay in the program?
We didn't know any better. We thought that was life. That's all we knew. We had grown up with that. We never had a chance to be a child with other children. When I was young, I was put into a regiment of being in a reform school. And after that, it was our mother was the people who were training us. And we were compartmentalized to the point that we did not know what the outside world was. And then when we were introduced into the world, we were under the suggestion that everybody in that world beyond the regiment is the enemy. You cannot trust them. They are trying this. They are trying that. They are people who are trying to kill the government. I mean, you wouldn't believe the things that were put in our heads without even telling us.
It wouldn't surprise me too much because they'll put a lot of crazy things in your head.
I mean, there was a fear about being outside the base or outside the company.
Did anyone in your class ever try to leave?
There were people who left. We do not know what happened to them.
To this day.
To this day. I mean, we have questioned, the ones of us who have now gotten together, question the same thing. What happened to this person or that person? You know, the guy that had the scar on his left eye, that had his mouth was pulled all the way back to his ear. What happened to him? Well, he left.
So,
they carried him out. He left.
Well, if they carried him out, I think I wasn't there, but I assume that if they let him leave, he was most likely dead or dying.
There's no way to know.
There isn't, but that's just speculation on my part.
There's no way to know. I couldn't speculate that. I felt that, but there's even to this day there are things that won't come out in my mind. You understand?
I completely well, kind of.
I mean, the things that I have brought up out of my mind came back out with the help of Paula, my wife, who just died this less than a year ago. If it wouldn't have been for her, I would have never became a near civilian. I'd never be sitting here alive because she held me up. She guided me through what I didn't know about in a world that I didn't know that really existed.
I see. And when did the program stop?
The program has never stopped.
Well, on you. When did your...
After Oklahoma City, I had very, very bad feelings that I expressed to Paula, and Paula started showing me things, and it was through that she confirmed that when I was at Waco, Texas, that what I was doing was wrong. And she showed me what other people were thinking, outside the just of the people that I was working with. Same thing at Ruby Ridge. It was the same thing. We did surveillance electronics of a level that most can't even understand today.
Is there any digital or physical proof that you were at these events? Because I think for some people it would be difficult to believe that you were at both of these things.
There are photos of me. There are photos with me escorting Tim McVeigh off the steps of the courthouse in Oklahoma City in disguise, wearing an FBI hat with a bulletproof vest. And we weren't FBI. We were associated targets.
I see. And Chris, you've been awfully quiet. Is there anything you wanted to add, or any questions you had?
No, I'm still just listening. This is interesting.
I agree. I didn't know much about the Haarp systems until today, really.
I have heard about them and what they're capable of, but obviously I haven't heard of anybody that have been directly related with the operation until now.
Yeah, this was a rare opportunity.
Well, I did put up a link there for you on Billy Hayes' update.
I see. I'll I'll be sure to check it out. Um, another question I had about the program. There was a report out recently, whether it's believed or not, that the Haarp system would be closed down. Uh, do you believe this? Do you have any knowledge of do you have any knowledge of why they're shutting it down if they are?
The excuse they gave in the very beginning, a year ago, on May 18th, they shut down Haarp Gakona and the United States Air Force Space Fence, which was something like $16 trillion worth of electronics. They shut it down on May 18th with their excuse that it was doing harm to the environment of Alaska. The very next day they turned around and said that they were shutting it down because they had no funds to run the operations at this time.
Not the problem with them saying it's bad for the environment. When have they ever cared about that?
I mean, everybody could see right through it. It was a joke.
The funding is at least a little more believable, but even that I don't believe.
Because 2 years ago, they made application for total rework of both the Space Fence and all the Haarp affiliated Haarp sites with Raytheon and Boeing and there was somebody else in LLC, LL1, L2 to revamp the new harping systems to digitized component systems with an exchange of frequencies, which meant that they had to close down certain microwave systems in order to bring up the new harping systems.
I don't think that even though they're shutting down the facilities, like you had mentioned off air, it's all digital. They can shut down the facilities, but the programming will still be there.
What they did is they shut down the high-powered end. Under the digital systems, they do not need that amount of power to do the weaponry and directed energy weapons that they work with now.
I see.
They need a multitude of them, but they don't need that power to do it.
So do you think that them shutting down the systems are just a way to shut us quote-unquote conspiracy theorists? Do you think it's a way to shut us up? Or do you think this is just something to distract us?
I think this is a byproduct of the NSA. I think this is a lateral move to take away the thought of Haarp for a while.
Naturally, the program, in our eyes, is going to continue. I don't believe that it'll stop here.
Well, the new Haarp is inclusive of things such as the new weather radar, the dual-phase digitized radar systems that are used by all the weather radar systems in the United States. In fact, all the way around the world now. This is a digitally pulsed system with digital information that is passed through each pulse. Understand, radar is not a frequency. It is a matter of pulses of a frequency. That's how it works. And that's how Haarp works. Also, there is a new pulsing that they devised from something that they're building almost locally to everybody in the United States and around the world. And that's the wind farm turbines. Within the United States, in the last 2 years, they have initiated 3,600 new wind turbines just in the United States. The UK, just in the English Channel, have put in over 700 brand new wind turbine sites in the water. And all these sites are built and designed to conform with the Haarp system. Their grounding systems are of 7,285 feet from each other, or what I want to call that, multiples of that distance. This is one of the Haarp wavelengths that they use, and it produces not only a sky wave, but with every transmitter that is used, you have a sky wave and you have a ground wave or a ground plane. And this is how the new Haarp is working. Not only do you have these wind farms making these pulses, exact same pulses that are being improvised by weather radar systems, but you have satellites that are doing the same conformity from above, creating a pulsation of the atmosphere, which is being inlaid with these chemtrails, with these mini particles of metal that are capable of picking up charges and resonating. Some of these components within these new clouds that are being just aerosol dispersed also have mylar components to it that are of micron, mini micron size, that have digital addresses on it. That I don't understand how it works, but it is there. That these particles have a digital ID on them.
Just to follow up on that, you say that the Haarp systems function as a dual weather manipulation and
multiple, not just dual, multiple,
and as a MK Ultra extension. So
more than that, when you're talking about harping, you're talking about a multiple utilization of many different instruments, of many different frequencies that combine to make different tunings. Just as the combination is unfathomable of the combination, the amount of different combinations they come up with. Each combination and each different combination of different frequencies creates a different tuning for a different suggested weapon. Some of these are capable of vibrating only certain portions of the Earth, or certain minerals of the Earth, or certain crystals within the confines of the Earth's crust. Whereas some of these frequencies are able to manipulate and vibrate only certain size particles in the air, creating a discharge that they can follow from either the pulse of a laser through the air, or the atmosphere, I should say atmosphere, or the beam off of radar that has focalized specific lengths of pulses that are resonant to only certain frequencies that are used by this Haarp system. So the different tunings are so multiple that it's endless now. The experiments that they have came up with and will come up with in the future. It isn't done with experimentation. They're still experimenting. But now they do have tools that they know how to use that are proven beyond any doubt that they can manipulate certain areas of the weather, certain areas of terraforming the Earth, certain areas of quaking, certain areas of manipulating storms or movement of things that already exist. Understand, the principle is it utilizes something that is already set to happen but initialize it in a abrupt manner to begin it now instead of waiting for it to happen. It also initializes certain blockages of air movement. They can actually devise walls to corner certain weather patterns, both in changing the velocity and the direction of movement of some air, such as the jet stream.
So, with the Haarp frequencies that they use, you say there are more possibilities than just there are more things they're experimenting with than just the weather manipulation and the manipulating of the body and the mind.
You have to understand how digital works. It isn't a matter of frequency. It's a matter of being able to make an application with another digital system.
I'm sorry, this is tough to grasp for me sometimes.
Okay.
I kind of got it now, but I'm sorry I had to explain it multiple times.
You cannot talk about your computer being of a frequency when it communicates. You got a 10 gigahertz computer, and it turns around and it has the capability of talking to a 2 gigahertz computer. Now that it doesn't communicate on those frequencies. It has that frequency, but it doesn't communicate that way. It communicates in digital applications,
Okay.
and in bits and bytes. And that's how the new Haarp works. It works on digital application of bits, bytes, megabytes, gigabytes, tetrabytes.
I see. And you mentioned to me off air when we were talking previously that when Haarp is activated, you have seizures.
Yes, when the analog Haarp was up, when they used different combinations of specific frequencies, it didn't matter where on this earth that I went, I would have seizures.
So why do you?
I have burns that were resonant to those frequencies from working at those Haarp sites. I have burns that have built back as scar tissue. I have cysts that have grown back at those wavelengths. I have what's the other word I'm looking for? Not cysts. Tumors. I have brain tumors that are resonant to those frequencies. When they utilize those certain combinations of frequencies, I would have extreme seizures. I had seizures to the extent that on many times my heart has stopped.
And you had also mentioned to me off air on that same topic that you had seizures when the Japan earthquake happened.
Yes, it was until that massive one gave me a heart attack that we realized how detrimental this was turning into. It took me down so fast and killed me so fast that we weren't able almost to be saved. If it wouldn't have been for Paula being around and recognizing that situation, I wouldn't be here today.
So,
But with the incident on Fukushima and the earthquake at Japan, at the same time that I had my seizures, there was conflict at the Haarp sites that they had to take the Haarp information site down because it was informative proof of what had happened. There was many people who captured that proof, and it is a matter of record now that the Haarp system had negotiated maintaining a change in the magnetosphere in such a might that it reversed the polarity of the magnetosphere.
I see. And do you think that Haarp did that on purpose, created that earthquake on purpose, or do you think it was just a malfunction?
This is only a thought. I think it was done on purpose.
And
Like many other things, I think there have been situations that have been intentionally utilized by Haarp to exhume a situation and then cover it up in another way. They have taken a natural situation and amended to it with Haarp and made it worse than it would have happened. I mean, it's nothing new. The Haarp has been around for longer than most people understand. Haarp was around back in 1963, and people don't realize it because in 1963, a gentleman by the name of Gerald Bull was working with HARP, high altitude.
aviation.
It was a distant project for their rifling of their big gun, the super gun, and they were wanting to throw atomic weaponry into outer space with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And they started out in the Bahamas and Bermudas working that system.
And that's where the name Operation Star Wars came from.
No, this was 63. This was earlier than that.
Oh, I thought Operation Star Wars was around before, during that period, before Reagan.
No, Nixon was back in the 60s. Reagan came in the 70s, my friend.
Right, but I thought that the operation was around before Reagan.
No, the first HARP was HARP. HAARP was negotiated with Star Wars in the 70s.
I see. All right, I had my history wrong there, but...
And my father was associated with the first HARP, HARP.
So, what was the purpose of the first HARP?
Their intent was to ring the magnetosphere with atomic weaponry on two different portions of the Earth to start a perpetual ring of certain areas of the flux of the magnetosphere. So it would ring forever, which it does. There are two areas of the magnetosphere that are considered active ringing paths, and they have been working it ever since, with a little emphasis from HARP. HARP keeps it going, or it increases it. It is with this flux field around these known magnetofluxes that they work with.
So, based on that, I assume that's how HAARP, the second version of that operation, was born, to keep that ringing forever by manipulating the magnetosphere.
Exactly. Well, there was accidents that happened with the first HARP, with Gerald Bull. In 1963, they did the final test, and everything of that test was erased, disappeared, and is no longer. That is because it initiated an earthquake across the Aleutian Islands and through Alaska. It practically destroyed Anchorage, Alaska in 1963. It moved the Earth some 23 feet from one street to the next curve. There were areas that were just, it was colossal. It was just colossal. Uh, at the airport, at the Air Force Base at Anchorage, you could look and see walls coming up around the base there. It was tremendous. That nobody had seen anything like that ever, and that was from a mistake that happened with the electronics associated with the testing of HARP at Whiskey Bay, Alaska, on the Aleutian Islands, just almost into Alaska, almost into Russia.
I see.
It's from that it provided the technology for the future Haarp.
So, do you know how Haarp evolved into not only something to keep the magnetosphere the way they wanted, but into something that could communicate with the body?
Well, it started out as wanting a new communication device. And in pursuing that, they found that the rhythms that they were utilizing was creating problems with other life forms, such as animals, such as dolphins, such as fish, such as whales, that it was able to disorientate them.
How was this come across?
It disorientated their sense of direction, their sense of guidance, their sense of where they were or where they were going,
I see.
or even who they were with. They found that whales that were under the presence of certain frequencies from Haarp started trying to adopt themselves to ships who they thought were their mothers. And in doing so, got cut up in the prop wars.
Oof.
And practically destroyed many a ship. I mean, you can imagine 4 or 5 whales coming up on a small vessel, and these whales going and think this is their mother and want to play with it.
That's pretty sad, but who? So we know how they came across it, but
well, you've seen the results of this all over the world.
Yes.
The whales going upstream into rivers, dolphins, porpoises going upstream to rivers, salmon coming out instead of going in, going out to the ocean where they cannot nest. It's that in itself started food shortages of salmon.
So they came across it, but who decided? Do you know who decided that it would be useful to make use of this on a human population?
Only thing I know is DARPA paid the bill.
So I'd imagine that DARPA somewhat knew and maybe even asked for certain research to be done. I would almost guess that would happen.
Somewhere in the area of $18 trillion worth.
Jesus Christ, that's more than our country owes.
Isn't that suspicious?
A little bit, but the official number is nothing compared to what the debt actually is.
I have to agree with you there. We have been lied to so much, and everything is pathetic.
And
for its truth service, it's redundancy trying to tell the truth anymore, or find the truth that is within ourselves that we're starting to recognize was the truth, and getting it out and being laughed at for trying to do so.
Certain conspiracy theories that seem crazy are born out of are born out of this fact that we are never given all the facts to support the official story, so naturally people are suspicious of what's being hidden.
I mean, yeah, well, just take Obamacare, for instance. Were we told everything about Obamacare?
Well, not everything's...
No, we were only told a portion of it. And even that got so messed up that it's pathetic.
And not all of it's been installed yet. They pushed off about 50 of the key provisions.
I mean, it's ridiculous. And this is a matter of history. And you know what history is, right?
Yes.
History is his story.
Mm-hmm.
It's his story. When you go to school and you're sitting in the history class, you're listening to his story.
I've debated
of what happened.
I've debated my history teacher so many times last year. It was funny.
I mean, who made the first radio? Marconi? No, Tesla. Who made the first electric motors?
Tesla.
The first electric generators?
Tesla.
Westinghouse? No, Tesla.
Who made the first electric car? Tesla.
I mean, it's unfathomable to think what this Tesla had in his head.
And how he was shut up.
And taken away.
And shut up and then killed.
I mean, they financially demised him. They demised him.
And then they literally did it.
And then they did him in.
Disappeared for 2 months and then was found dead.
Who wasn't seen for 2 months, and then all of a sudden they find him dead in his room. Had no idea how long he'd been there. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. Who would have motive in doing that? The people that get the donations from the car companies. Who would that be? All right, the government.
Yeah, but which government? He was Russian.
Well, probably ours did him in.
And it's known that he had sent off portions of his information prior to his death to his brother and to Russia and to another foreign country and to the United States.
Well, the information in the United States...
All information was not congealable with each other. They were all enemies.
Well, yeah, there's the mystery, but all of them get donations from car companies.
Yep, and then some president comes along and butters up Russia, and they say, "Oh, we'll share this with you."
Oh.
And all of a sudden, we have new weapons.
And I don't know if the timeline matches up, but all of a sudden we have a big alliance with Joseph Stalin.
We must understand that these electronic products that they are playing with are like drugs. They are an addiction. In fact, that is part of the mind control aspect of the harping end of it. It is addiction. It's like music. It's like drugs. You become addicted to a certain climate of music or a certain climate of drugs, and your body wants it. It needs it. It does not want to work without it.
You know, as a kid, I would always wonder if there was such a thing as mind control, and now that I'm older and in this business of finding the truth, I wish I hadn't asked. Well, sometimes I wish I hadn't asked, but I'm glad I know the truth.
Chris, you got a question there? I hear you thinking.
No, I don't have anything to say up to this point.
Yeah, you learning something, Chris? Or are you not? Are you believing or not believing? Because it's understandable to not.
He's over there rubbing his temple, so he must be thinking.
Well, I'm more or less debating on what I'm hearing with
that's natural.
so-called proven facts. But
well, should I look up some of these instances of some of the things I'm talking about, how they relate to each other? Would that help?
Chris, here's a point that I wanted to bring up to you. If you doubt that it's capable of what we're saying, here's some. Recall the Japan earthquake. There were two anomalies during that event. Two that had never happened in recorded history. There was no epicenter, technically, and there was no pre-warning. There was not a single bit of conflict in the plates beforehand. It just happened. Never happened in recorded history. So, unless we're having scientific anomalies, there had to have been a man-made aspect to it.
I'm going to help you both out. Let me post this in here for you.
So, Chris, based on what I have said, do you agree with my statement or disagree?
Well, I agree with the part of the earthquake because anybody who has looked into Haarp has probably read or came across that part. I don't know. It's just some of the parts to me don't seem to fit, and that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around.
Which parts don't fit? Maybe we can have Billy or me correct a mistake or fill in the gap for you.
Well, I'm sort of questioning the origin of the story. Billy, you said that you were how'd it go? You were part of sort of like a class that was somewhat military based around the Haarp system, and you were keeping away from civilian life, right?
Roger.
That is the part that I'm trying to wrap my head around. I feel like I may have missed something, but how were you brought into that?
When I got in trouble, I was put into a school, which was nothing more than a place where they profile each child that was there. And the ones that fit their purpose, their needs, they selected from that grouping. And those kids were put into specialized training. During that sequence, those children that were in that program underwent classes that most of us can't quite put together. It's part of our memory, but it's not all there because we were induced into drugs, shock therapy, electrical shock therapies, and then redrugged afterwards. And it was a how do you want to call it? Kind of a hypnosis type thing, where they fed you information that you really don't remember, but it's in your head, and under certain situations or certain keys, that memory came back for a short period of time. That's how we were trained. Then we were introduced to see if this situation worked. We were introduced into a specialized school that was just off base, where we associated with John Doe Public to see if this training would withstand. If it didn't, then we were deprogrammed. Does that make sense to you?
That definitely filled in a lot of gaps that I had, but it's more of like the how to say, about just sort of what the average person would think. That instant question that they would get: why would they do this? I mean, there's been reasons stated, but just what would they have to gain by this? Wouldn't people easily, find out? How long were you in this program?
I was in that program for over 30 years.
Right, that's what I thought.
But
And
Chris,
during that 30 years, I did not know what being a civilian was.
so Chris, a couple of the other things you had asked about why would they do it? It's simple. What's the one thing that any government fears? Can
Government fears a lot of stuff.
What's the one thing that they fear most?
I mean, let me express something to you. There's a term used, and I hate to hear it. Many people are using the term now, super soldiers. And this is what they're talking about. There is no such thing as a true super soldier. There are people who are under a specific command that they are trained to identify with. And when that command comes, they will act in a almost hypnotic state. This is what some of these people are calling super soldiers. There are some of us who have found a way to be deprogrammed from that system. And one of those others has been Kathy O'Brien and Mark Phillips, and myself, and about 15 others.
Have deprogrammed themselves?
We assisted each other in getting deprogrammed through another person.
Oh, Chris, the other thing, why would they want to do it? The one thing they fear most is losing control. And in the United States right now, let's look at a few instances where it might be useful. You have growing discontent with the current leadership. You have growing discontent with the system. You have growing discontent with the decisions made by our leadership. Wouldn't that be useful in this instance? For them, at least, to control a population. Chris?
Probably gave him too much to think about.
Probably.
I actually still am thinking about this.
Okay, I did put up some informative links for you there.
Thank you.
I've been looking at them.
As have I.
I mean, you can run through my Facebook and take a look at that. And I'll be glad to friend you if you can't get in.
All right. What's your? Can you just type to me your Facebook?
It's up there. That's it. Right underneath our pictures.
Okay. I'm printing you right now. So, Chris, the other instances it might be useful. Billy, correct me if I'm wrong on the timeline, but this was discovered, I believe, during the time when just after JFK's assassination.
That's affirmative.
And just after Richard Nixon's impeachment or resignation.
It was during the mortal control of George W. Bush.
HW or W?
The senior.
Okay. So that's probably, based on all that information, there was growing discontent at the time. So that information would have been very useful for them to research.
Affirmative.
If it wasn't true, then they would find another way. But when they found out it was true, I'm sure they jumped on the chance.
You said that right.
So, if the technology exists, they want it. Whether they can use it in the present or in the foreseeable future, they want to have that technology available to them.
They wanted to know the technology to the extent that if someone else had that technology, they would be able to cope with it in an anti-way.
I see. So they wanted their mission in finding this was to counteract it in the future.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. I mean, I guarantee now that I know it's there, I want to learn how to counter its effects.
I mean, people fell to render to the fact that the Russians were working with the same thing
During the Sleeper Project.
during the Woodpecker Project.
So was that before or after the Sleeper Project?
That was before.
So they were experimenting with it even before recorded time, or even before we knew they were doing it.
Exactly. In fact, the Germans were working on it during World War II.
Right, in the concentration camps that were experimenting on it.
They were also working on the electronics.
And due to Operation Paperclip, where German Nazi scientists came to the U.S. and were employed by us, that wouldn't shock me too much if they continued their research.
They brought them in. Excuse me. They brought them into the United States and put them in isolated camps.
To continue that research, if I were them in that situation, I would have had them continue that research. They might have, they might not have.
One of the ones here in Kansas is very nearby. It's called Walker Field. And it was a detention camp for Germans.
So were they...
So I'm surrounded by families of these Germans here.
But were these scientists asked to continue that project, or were they put on new operations?
They were asked to continue in order to maintain their lives.
I see.
There was no options.
So all the superpowers at the time were experimenting with the technology.
Absolutely.
And to this day...
Russia did the same thing.
Right.
Russia took in many German scientists.
To this day, I'm sure that all three have perfected the technology, all three superpowers, Russia, China, and the United States. I'm sure all three have perfected the technology.
Exactly.
Or at the very least, Russia and the United States.
I mean, one of those people had advanced knowledge of what we're talking about right now, and his name was Schumann, Dr. Schumann, who emised the Schumann effect and the Schumann frequencies.
So there are people with extensive knowledge on the topic, and I'm sure that if we went out and looked, there were scientists who could vouch for what we're saying.
Oh, absolutely. They're out there, but the fact is they won't come forward. They have fear. If they open their mouths, they're goners.
Oh.
As with many of the people I have been with,
if we learned,
no longer.
If we've learned anything from these people in control, if you do their dirty work, you're bound to be killed by them anyway to cover it up.
I mean, people need to learn the Snowden effect and protect themselves.
Disappear,
but hide the information
within multiple sources.
Right.
So that you have leverage. If you kill me, they'll all spread the biggest secret you have.
Snowden is not the problem. The problem is the information that is out there that he has hidden. He doesn't have that information on him. That's why they don't want to cause his demise. Otherwise, he'd be dead now. I mean, there is nowhere in the world for a man to hide when they want you.
Of course, I would be shocked if they weren't even considering the possibility.
Chris, I didn't see you come in here. I opened it up to Dylan. Poor
I was
Chris.
actually what?
I said poor Chris.
I was actually debating some of the things as you were speaking with some of the viewers in a different chat.
Oh, okay.
We have viewers? Oh, yeah, we have 4 now. And we were down to 0 for like a half hour there.
People may watch it after.
Yeah, I'm sure people will. If they don't, it's their loss. This is great information.
It is if people do believe that this is a real and actual occurring problem.
I think that's the key. Some people won't, but those are the people that we have to go after the most. We're only as strong as our weakest link.
Dylan, I don't see that up here where you posted the
link to the show.
link. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here it is. I'm just testing the link. And it doesn't want to load. Billy, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here. I had to turn the volume down there.
Okay, so do you have any knowledge that China is experimenting with the technology?
Oh, absolutely. They have their own separate harping system or semblance of the harping system. They've got over 42 stations in China of the same attribute as was Galcona. And Russian have theirs, which was huge. It used more of the electromagnetic component instead of the radio frequency component.
That's interesting.
So, do you think that what the Chinese were using separately would be more powerful than the one that you were familiar with?
Absolutely. They were working into the digital systems, far advanced of the U.S.
Do you think that all of their systems would be able to work together and in sync?
Absolutely. It's a matter of introduction of application. Remember, every digital component utilizes an application. When you download your phone with ringtones, that's an application. Within that application are far more applications than you ever thought you were utilizing.
It's amazing. This used to be science fiction. I remember reading about this in science fiction books.
I mean, embedded within every application are 20 or 30 different applications that are going into your phone or your digital device. Every time you utilize your TV, it is a digital TV now. And you do remember how fast they switched over from analog TV to digital TV. It was like one night they came on and said, by this date, you will have to have either a converter or a new digital TV. You had no choice.
We see the technology utilized in the corporate world.
And it's also during this same time, all of a sudden you started hearing about Haarp.
Billy, did we lose you? Chris, did we lose you?
Utilities out there, it's these new digital utilities out there that all of a sudden we started hearing about. All at the same time. Yet they had been working for years and years and years. Well, I'm not seeing any comments on. I just see people watching. This is not fair, guys. You get to see all the good stuff.
seems we've come to a standstill.
It's amazing. I never thought I would be silent on this topic.
I've got more answers if you got more questions.
Do you mind if I question some of the things that you're saying?
Go ahead, my friend.
How about the part where you say that there are several applications in an application? Is that just what you've heard, or do you have any evidence to back that up?
Oh, we've tried the same thing. We heard about it, and we looked at the same thing that other people were talking about. For instance, the applications in the digital converters for the TV, we found over 6,000 other applications that were filed when the unit was put out on the market. After the unit was plugged in, it started taking on more applications. Soon it was plugged into your cable or to your TV and started receiving signals from out yonder. There were new applications being filed to that converter continuously. Every time a program went on, there was application, there was modification, there was updates. It doesn't matter what you do in the digital world. There is update. And people don't understand. Each one of those updates is no more than an application. And within each one of these applications are multiple applications for other things other than what you think you're getting.
Is there any capability for the Haarp system to be used for other operations?
Absolutely. It's the mainstay of communications worldwide. It is a transmission link of all digital components of communications. It is the highway of information.
At this point, do you think shutting down the Haarp systems like they say they're planning to do is feasible?
Can't be done. Doing so would shut down all your capabilities of internet in the near future, all components of all your cellular systems, which interlink into the harping system.
So there's no way to completely stop the program. It's just got to be regulated so that they can't do this kind of research.
It is part of the digital mainstay.
So they started the Haarp system before the internet?
Oh, there, now you're getting the answers. Understand this. Just prior to cellular operation coming online, there was an emphasis of moving all frequencies that would be associated with cellular. That included all microwave links that did communication for hospitals, EMS, sheriff's departments, police departments, and all microwave communications of telephone were all moved. All those frequencies were moved off the 2 gigahertz band, the 1.8, 2.4, 2.8, and 3 gigahertz band. That was a massive, massive move back in the early 70s. Prior to cellular systems coming online. This is all in emphasis of the new programming for Haarp to move in. All grounds were removed from the power systems and cable systems and telephone systems of every 16th pole was initialized to be a ground. This was the distance of that multiple or partial fundamental wavelengths of 7,285 feet. All railroads were regauged for grounding at spaces of 7,285 feet or multiples thereof. All electrical substations were redone and refitted to equal a distance of separation of 7,285 feet or multiples thereof. All casings on oil wells have an isolator installed on them when they hit 7,285 feet or a fundamental wavelength thereof. That makes these things resonant to those frequencies. You remember back a year, maybe two ago, of seeing in Texas where all the telephone poles were catching on fire on top?
Yeah, I remember hearing about it.
That was due to the fact that these were tuned and grounded at these specific distances that represent those low ELF frequencies. When those ELF frequencies came through, whether it be a compromise with the sun giving off its resonant frequencies, or whether it was Haarp or associated Haarp signals, these long-wired components became resonant as a lost ground. You know, when you lose water content in your soil, you start losing ground. This is what caused the fire on all these poles.
Steve Stevenson in the comments, we already answered the question, but I just want to address it one more time really fast, if that's all right with you.
I'm ready.
He said, what do you guys think about Haarp being shut down for good this year? And what we had said was it's an impossibility because they would have to shut down the internet and cell phones as well, which are all wired through the Haarp systems.
All government communication would come to a standstill. We would have to go back to the analog system of total isolation. We would have to reground everything in this world.
And that would just be it. We wouldn't be the only ones in the dark, though, because the internet would be lost.
And we have to understand, Haarp has been taken down, but only the analog version of Haarp. It has been down now for a year. 1 year to this date, May 18th, is when they shut the analog systems down. That included...
So,
go ahead.
Just a little bit earlier, were you saying that you believe that all the internet and phone systems go through the Haarp system?
That's absolutely what I'm saying.
And you're saying, are you saying that's all it relies on?
All digital components and devices utilize the same format of digitality. They use the same applications. They have the capability of filing cross applications to work with each other. Your cell phone can talk to your smart meter. Your smart meter can talk to your computer. Your computer can talk to your TV. This is a matter of application. You look up an application, you download that application, you install that application, and with that application are 10 more applications that are hidden in the cookies.
I see. So,
this is part of the NSA. This is how the NSA is entrapping all incoming and outgoing communications. It isn't a matter of who they're watching. They're watching everything that's digital. I shouldn't say they're watching. They have record of everything that is digital.
And the way I look at it is they're creating a library and a book for each person.
And what Snowden is telling is, in this library there are index cards. And you can go and find that index card and then go find the book and find the subject matter that you're looking for. This is what Snowden's telling us.
I wish he would have told us about the Haarp system, because that would have been a real eye-opener.
Snowden has already told us about the Haarp system.
I wish it had gotten the mainstream coverage that the NSA got.
It is mainstream. It's been on mainstream, but it got squelched like anything else. It comes across one time, and then you don't hear about it again.
Oh yeah, they brought on chemtrails for one show.
I mean, even the Weather Channel has been speaking out about what this harping system is, or associated harping systems. They have talked about optically initiating lightning with lasers to build up charges that are not natural in our cloud masses, and then discharging them and developing what is called sprites. All this is part of the manipulation by Haarp, or the associated Haarp systems. And even chemtrails is part of the associated Haarp system. I know, there's no such thing as chemtrails. Those lines up there in the sky have been there since you were 16. Well, guess what? That's all you've seen since you were 16.
It's all I've seen since I was born.
I remembered 60 years ago when the sky had real clouds up there, and they were different. Every cloud had a silver lining in it that you could clearly see and had hope for in the future. Now you go out and you see a bewilderment of this prismatic effect that comes out from the edge of the clouds that has reds in it, it has orange in it, it has purples in it, it has blue.
I've
You
never
can't-
seen the different colors. I've only seen white.
No, when you look at a cloud closest to the sun, take a look at the edge. When you have a tight-looking cloud, it's got a good looking edge. Look at it and you will see that prismatic effect around the edges of those clouds. You do not see a cloud with a silver lining in it. You see a prismatic effect coming out from the edge of that cloud.
Chem clouds. Chris, are there any questions you have?
Yeah, but it would bring us back to an earlier point that I was talking about.
That's fine.
The part where you said... Sorry?
Before we came on the radio?
No, not
Okay.
that far. Maybe like 5-10 minutes.
Oh,
About the part where you said that the internet and phone systems go through the Haarp and rely solely on Haarp.
no. They rely on each other. One will not work without the other. They are all conjoining in a digital system.
So you're saying that if Haarp went down, all internet and phone systems would also go down?
In partiality. It wouldn't go down completely, but there would be a lacking of communications. There would be a lack of some applications that have been formed. When one can't talk to the other one has to go out and seek another way to make its pathway.
So you don't believe that all of these are solely powered by what most people believe, just by the satellites?
No.
The satellites have to work in communication with something.
You have to remember the whole idea of digital is you can fit so much information in such a small space. That is the first ideal of the data that comes forth with digitality.
All right. So
Um,
you also stated that every app that you download contains multiple apps inside as well, correct?
That's affirmative.
What would...
You can open those apps up
Is it
and go through, and if you were a TI, you could filtrate through what is really needed to make that application work.
Is it okay if
And-
we take a short break? I just need to eat really fast. I'm sorry.
I need a cup of coffee.
So is it alright if we take a quick break?
Affirmative.
Alright.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, sounds good.
Alright, sorry guys.
Democratically, we've moved that we take a pause for the cause.
Alright. Be back in probably 5-10 minutes.
Well, he didn't sign off, so he's probably in there doing the index per text.
Hello, we're back. This is the Truth Speaks Network. I'm sorry we had to take that intermission. I just had to eat something. My food was getting cold. So we had a question in the chat for you, Billy.
I wish I knew where this chat was, but oh well.
Okay, Steven from before asked, if my computer, which is digital, is disconnected from the internet, am I safe from Haarp?
No. So, just because you disengage your computer does not mean you're away. You still have your cell phone. You still have your TV. You still have your...
Well, I think what he means is he safe from when Haarp is shut down?
No.
Well,
no, because Haarp is one of the toolings is the ideal that it can make a direct contact with the Earth frequencies. The Earth frequencies, of course, being 2 hertz through 800 hertz. These are frequencies that all living organisms have to maintain. It is an identifier of their electrical component of life. All life has an electrical component to it.
Right.
A rhythm. And this is one of the things that Haarp indulges in, too.
Oh, it must love that. It must love being able to access just about everything.
I mean, your bowels work on a system of 7.285 hertz. If you have 7.285 hertz at the proper pulse width, you can initiate your bowels relieving themselves. I mean, your whole digestive system works on that system.
Steven said he meant, is his computer itself safe if it's not connected to the internet from Haarp?
Your computer has a line to your electrical transmission lines. Anything that supplies a 2-wire or 2-conductor type system is obligable to Haarp. That means to say your phone system, your electrical system. The Earth is 1 conductor, while your clouds, your atmosphere, Whoa. Oh, that scared me.
Well, I bet. You had things talking to you, and it seems you didn't know what they were.
Oh, I thought Haarp got me. But your atmosphere and your Earth crust are 2 different mediums that can communicate a pathway of communications for Haarp. Remember I said a ground plane and a sky plane? Well, that is just one of the ways. And since the Earth already works, I mean, even your volcanic action works in the 2 hertz area. The movement of lava is like 2.285. Your mood swings are something like 79976 or something like that. But everything on that's initialized in the electrical being of living is got a frequency. This is where the Rice machine comes from. You know, the machine that can duplicate your moods or relieve you of pain, or it's an electrical stimulation. Even a TENS unit works on these bases. It uses electrical pulses.
Do you, getting into theories about what you just said, do you think that constant Haarp interference is responsible for things like ADHD?
I do believe so, because there's been an increase in it since the late 70s, which is when they start doing the testing of some Haarp frequencies. And it evolved even more so in the mid-90s. It's on the increase the last 5 years that has just multiplied so mathematically. I mean, it's just end over end. Same thing for some of these other things. Mental illness has increased. All these things have increased. You start looking at what's going on in the world, and it's what are they call people who are gifted children?
It's escaping me.
You know, they have a disability because their learning process is
Autism.
autism. Exactly. The rates of autism have increased by threefold over the last 4 years.
Some people will state that autism.
And it is. It's part of the shots we're getting. The what's they call that?
Vaccines.
Vaccinations. Exactly.
We're getting vaccinations for doses of
even
mercury.
Even vaccinations have something to do with Haarp.
Right, because they operate. Because you need, I assume, certain frequencies
Certain frequencies.
for the chemicals in the vaccines to work.
I mean, I even took note of something several years ago, was these lights that we're using. I could go stand on a hillside and look down and see street lights from a distance by looking down. And I noted that as I was watching, certain phased areas would phase out. You know, the distribution of electrical systems is done in phases from the distribution centers.
Right. Stephen had another question. If we could touch on that really fast.
Actually, I would actually like to cover that because I actually know the guy who's making the comments.
I was about to ask if you knew him, but
I didn't know who it was until about 5 minutes ago when he asked me the same question over Skype. So I was wondering if I could take that question and implement another question with it that we talked about earlier.
Sure, go ahead. But Billy, I would like to come back to that topic later.
Okay, this is for you, Steve.
All right. Billy, you said that when you download an application, several applications are added, and you said that if you tried, you could go into those folders and check folders in files that shouldn't be there, correct?
Affirmative.
All right, well, I am actually studying in the field of information technology. I currently have 2 certificates in the field. If you're saying it's with any application, are you saying I should be able to open up, say, Skype and its files and be able to find certain files that should not be there?
You said that right. I mean, that's how they ingest additional information from where you are, from who's talking, who you're talking to.
All right. Because if I open up Skype right now, there are several folders and directories that I can go into, and I can see every file that is in here, every application extension, everything, and there's not a thing that I see that's out of place. I see all the different files for all the languages that are added, all the different fonts when you go into your settings. All the settings, I can look through the folders full of settings, and there's not one thing that I see specifically that is out of place.
There are additional cookies within each application. And in that application are birdies. Some of those birdies work with other applications. They're only a partial application, and when another application is mated with another application, then you have three applications instead of just two.
All right. Well,
There are partial applications spread throughout. They've got us by the ha-has.
Well, the reason why I find this so unusual is because I also studied in computer science, where we actually make programs and applications of our own. But it almost seems like you're saying that every application is given up by the government, because I can't see any other way for Haarp to have access to putting their own applications into it, because if I made an application and I distributed it myself, I don't see how Haarp could put their own applications into my application that I created and distributed.
Could I answer that one, Billy, and you can correct me if I'm wrong? Well,
I think you already know.
if the applications are online and they're used through the internet, which most applications are, let's face it, then Haarp, being able to run the internet, as we can tell they are, it's wired through it, can insert the cookies when the data is transferred through the servers. Am I wrong?
That doesn't sound plausible or possible from anything that I've been over.
All digital format has to run a pathway, and for it to run that pathway, it has to go through other centers. And when it goes through those centers, it does not just go back to the person you're sending it to. It goes through a multiple of other surveys, and during that run, it will recourse and come back and give that other person an option of where that message is going to come from, and they can make it so you don't receive the direct information. You receive what has been hyped and rerouted and put back to you, and with that information comes additional applications. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you do. There are applications being added as we're talking right now.
Chris, does that kind of answer your question?
Somehow, but the thing is, going back to the original question that Stephen was going to ask, because the part that I brought up was actually by me, it was just related to what he said, but for machinery or anything, I guess you could say electric to run, would need an application stored in itself in order for the hardware to work.
Right. It has to be, everything you use has to have a download of that application needed to make it.
Exactly. It needs its own software. He brought up the point that, does that mean that his electric massage chair is being affected by Haarp currently, and is it a threat?
Is his electric what?
A massage chair, will it be affected by Haarp?
It is part of the pathway of communications. If it has a digital component, then your smart meter is going to be able to read that component.
The smart meters have always been a subject of debate, and knowing the little that I know about the smart meters, they, I believe, are extensions of Haarp. Local, small local versions of Haarp for your house.
They're just extensions of the digital pathway.
Okay.
And that digital pathway includes Haarp. That digital pathway includes cellular phones. That digital pathway includes your internet.
Can understand that these are that these signals can be relayed and passed back and forth through each other by either a computer, a cell phone, a mobile device such as a tablet, but I don't see how something as simple as that, or say even your kitchen blender that has to have software to run, could also relay these signals, because a computer, a mobile tablet, and a mobile cell phone, they all have connection receivers. I don't see how they can be passed through anything else, because there's nothing in that in the hardware on their small circuit boards that have enough power to even relay a signal to something else.
That's what people don't understand. Digital does not take power. Everybody wants to relate to power. That we're talking about, how much signal strength it has. With digital, you either have it or you don't have it. And if you have it, then it's clear. There's no such thing as having a snowy picture. The snowy picture comes from the sender. If it's digitized and on the air, if you receive it, it's going to be a digital signal. It will be clear. In order not to receive that signal, you don't receive nothing.
See,
it's either on or off.
This is sort of how I'm getting confused. So are you saying that an electronic that is on will be put through this system by Haarp? Any system? Is that what you're saying?
It will be put as a digital pathway.
Anything that uses electricity, which is anything, like our bodies use electricity, use our brain, use electro waves. Anything that uses those waves can be affected by Haarp. So basically anything in the world can be affected by Haarp. Correct?
Eventually every life form on this earth will be affected by some type of harping system or some type of cellular system.
That's what I find awkward, because people say that yes, your body can give out, like, as you said, a sort of like frequency, like electricity. But if that were true, and it would even affect the smallest forms of electricity that come from the human body, wouldn't that affect all the metals in the world too, that can relate even more than the human body?
Exactly. Metals and crystals are the most extreme exchange of the Schumann effect, of the resonant frequencies of the Earth.
Stephen had another question for us. He's really concerned about these technologies being affected by it. He asked...
Well, there's nothing to worry about. It's here. We're living with it now. It's only going to get exponentially bigger and more predominant.
He asks, if I use a digital to analog converter for my headphones, can I at least save those from Haarp?
Nothing's safe from Haarp. Nothing's safe from the digital age. If it's digital, it's digital.
And everything is seemingly digital.
I mean, it's a matter of there was an application that was made to make that digital instrument work. And there's another application that can talk to that. And there's a sub-application that can be used to listen to both, to see what's going on with if it's receiving, if it's not receiving, if it's off, if it's on, how much energy it uses, or how loud the music is. There's a transition of information going between anything that's digital. Whether you realize or not, it is a two-way street.
Well, that's where it's confusing me, because you're saying anything digital can go through, but we're also talking about it going through people. So are you saying that people count as a digital object?
Well, our brains work on a partial digital system. Electrical digital, it hasn't been proven yet.
But the theory is...
it is a digital component. Once we get past that tetra wavelength, we will be able to see that. But until we get there, And that's what the rush is. That's what all these governments are trying to beat each other to, is get to that tetra wavelength. Because that wavelength is so small that it transverses even to a single atom.
And that's where the rush is. They haven't gotten there yet.
They haven't gotten there yet.
So we still have time to stop it before they get to the point
no,
of total dominance.
Right. See, the whole idea in the beginning was with Haarp was the tomographic capability of it to ring certain elements of the Earth and be able to tell where those resources were, whether it be oil, gold, silver. Every component, every element has a resonant frequency.
Well,
And the idea of in the beginning was to ring those specific frequencies and see if there was a balance off those frequencies and where that balance was coming back, and make a map of that component and where it lays and where the reflections were coming from.
I can see how your theory. I guess I can say I can see how your theory, in theory, works. But from what I'm thinking, there seems to be a lot of flaws with it. I know it's just a theory and it isn't proven yet, so there isn't really any testing on it. But you said that
They're experimenting.
They're experimenting. That's what it's all about.
yeah,
And this experiment hasn't stopped. But what they have done is they've tooled up to utilize what they already have found.
yeah. But you're saying that you were saying how there was the big change that was somewhat rushed from analog to digital, yet you're saying that these signals can be relayed through common electronics in the house. So analog can still relay these electrical impulses just like a person would. So these electrical pulses would still be going through as analog. So that's another thing that I'm thinking of now. Why would they have to switch over if it works the same way?
Because digital is more powerful.
They want the control of that digital component. Whoever they are, they want command of that digital command. That controls everything. I mean, we use computer systems now to run our machinery, to run our factories, to run our communications, to take care of our banks, to take care of everything.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
He who controls the internet controls the flow of information. He who controls the digital age controls everything.
I wish I had a switch and I could turn everything off. Go back to candles and batteries. And yes, the ideal batteries. Lithium batteries can become very, very dangerous under certain frequencies of Haarp.
That's probably... there was a story a while back about a lithium tube being found in a lithium vein being found in, I believe, Iraq. And do you think they'll be using that for testing?
I'd hate to go there, but I'm afraid what you're saying is a possibility.
They could be using it for testing, or they could be selling it because it's worth $1 trillion.
I mean, lithium is such a dangerous element in the first place. I mean, you take lithium and a lithium battery and separate the plates and take one drop of water and drop on it. It will discharge the most humongous flash that you have ever seen. I mean, just one small plate out from a little tiny battery. I mean, this has been the problem with some of these off-the-wall chemists making what's that stuff called, meth, that utilizes what's that called, pseudoephedrine and lithium and starting fluid and all that stuff. Just think about what you're sitting there with. Starting fluid, lithium, and pseudometaphone. Oh my gosh, you got a bomb sitting in your hand.
Um,
One drop of water on top of that lithium plate, when they throw it all together, oh, kaboom! Goodbye, baby.
Chris, are you starting to see the full picture?
If you want my honest opinion,
Yes.
I'm still, I guess you could say, starting to see your guys' picture, but I've already been lost. I'm not following a lot of the stuff that you're saying because I've had stuff proven to me otherwise.
Well, let's put it this way. What I'm trying to say here is everything has this atomic frequency. You agree? Every element has an atomic frequency.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And if you should excite that frequency and be able to maneuver that frequency or speed that frequency up a little bit, you become to a point you have an unstable element. True?
Yep.
That element is more than likely, under most situations, become volatile and more than likely try to assume oxygen or some other component to make it combustible. True?
Yeah, but
So
like,
if you're able to devise frequencies from something as simple as a light on a light pole that can resonate that frequency or a fundamental of that frequency, you could excite that component, such as lithium, or even more so, a compound made with lithium. A compound has a separate frequency, atomic frequency of its own. Once you start combining other elements, there are other subliminal frequencies that would initiate heating up that atomic frequency. You could actually blow batteries out of a car. These lithium batteries they're using in these hydrogen cells. You could, oh Lord, you could do massive destruction if you knew the frequency. You understand what I'm saying? They could grid individuals aim a frequency at a vehicle going down the road and tell you goodbye. And we're not far from having cars that drive by themselves following a line of frequencies and digital encodings that are milled into the road.
Billy, we're there. Google built a self-driving car in 2013 that subsequently, or not Google, do you know the company? Maybe when I bring up what happened, it'll refresh.
Well, there's been a competition for this, the self-driving mobile.
Michael Hastings, the journalist for the Rolling Stone, was driving a self-driving car when his car sped up to 180 miles and crashed into a tree and exploded.
I hate to tell you, but we're in for a lot of surprises in our future. And you, as a young man, Dylan, you're going to get to see it all, my friend.
Yeah, me and Chris.
Well, the thing is, almost everything you're saying, when you get in depth, sounds like it could be possible. Like it could possibly be something. But
for your generation, it's almost going to be routine where you don't notice it. You understand?
The thing is, though, go ahead.
For me, the changes have been so massive over the last 60 years that I still have enough brains left and memory left that I can see the difference from then to now. I mean, just the difference in the last 8 years has just been so massive. It's incredible. But there are people who walk around looking down at the ground and never lifting their head to see what's around them. Same thing goes when they get in communications. They don't talk about everything. They don't want to find out about everything. They don't want to know about nothing. They want to live in that world that they think exists in their own being. And it doesn't work that way. We are people. We associate with others. And we live in a world where we have to communicate in order to survive. And that's what we're doing right now. We're informing each other of what's out there, or what to look for, or what has happened that someone has missed. I saw this. I touched this. I smelt this. I tasted this. I heard this. I was there. And that's the difference. Now when you go outside, you will look at the street lights like I was talking earlier. You will go out on a hill and probably do what I did, is sit there for hours and hours waiting for that specific time when I looked down and saw all the lights in the city, all the street lights in the city, and saw portions of the lights start dulling real slow. I mean, like watching the minute or the hour hand on a watch. Very slow, they start dimming in one area. And they will go almost completely out, just a twinkle. Yet when you're sitting in town, you look out your window and you don't see that happening, because what's happening is the angle of the lights start diminishing, and it only covers a certain area. And then when it reaches a resonant frequency, it starts opening up that width that light shines on. But the brightness doesn't seem to change. And what you see from a distance is you see these lights almost seem like they go out, because you can only see just the light itself, not what it's hitting. And it makes it look like that portion of the city is going black. And then it will start rising, and you will notice on the other side of town, it's the same thing starting to happen as this one's getting brighter. This one over here on your right, it's getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And it goes through a sequence of each distribution of the light system in that town. There's something always going on in this world. Check it out. I kid you not. I thought it was just here in Kansas. But as I went to other states, I started seeing the same thing in Florida. I saw the same thing in Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri. I saw the same thing in New York City. I sat on top of one of the tallest buildings there and watched things happen. There are things going on that I can't explain, but it all has to do with resonant frequencies.
Hey, Chris? Chris? Is Steven just messing around with these questions now? Because they're really getting bizarre.
I don't even know. I haven't been following the questions.
The last one said, I read somewhere that sperm holds over 37 megabits of DNA data. Does that mean not even they're safe from the digital age controlled by the government?
Why is he asking such wild questions?
I don't know. That's what I was thinking too.
I don't know everything. And I hate to throw out assumptions.
I would say that he's probably asking something like that because, well...
I'm sorry, Steve. There are some things I don't know. I know what I've seen. I know what I've touched. I know what I've been into. I know what the purpose was now. Back then, I had no idea. I was young. I was told this. I was told that, and I believed that. And then I grew up and found out, Billy, you were lied to. And I think we all go through that.
And this all wraps
Hmm.
back around to your theory because you like when you are explaining everything and how it works, when you are really in depth and really far down what you're talking about, the things that you're piecing together make sense. But when you zoom back out to the bigger picture, that's what I think needs to be questioned.
The
Back to the point that I brought you back to several times about the
Well,
signals going through people. That's something that I've been discussing with some of my friends that we still don't agree because there's more uh, that could be passed through metal in the ground that stretch across the entire planet. Why would they put it through electronics if they could just put it through the metal?
because
because the metal acts as an antenna. It is just part of that transmission. You understand? The crystals are part of the amplification to keep the information repeating. It's only part of it, but it's a big part of it. You understand? Every time you put pressure on a crystal, whether it be a vibration or a physical pressure on a crystal, it develops a frequency. It develops a frequency that is assessed by nature. But when you indulge into man-made frequencies, you can develop a way to control that crystal. And that's what it all comes down to, is a resonance of all these frequencies, finding a solution of promoting the pathway of transmission, whether it be in the air or through the wire. And like I've tried to express, when you talk about it going through the air, you're still talking about two pathways of conduction. You're talking about the Earth and the atmosphere. The difference between them creates two different paths for communications. You have a skywave, you have ground wave, and the Earth is your ground.
All right, this
At least,
definitely is starting to make a little bit more sense. I
I
still think
mean,
it's debatable, but it's just a theory, right?
in order to make communications, even in outer space, you still have to develop a ground plate on the antenna.
Actually, I had a question from a viewer, something like that. You've heard about the future Mars missions about sending people to Mars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the Harp system would be able to affect them from Earth?
Oh man, you hit a big one there. Here's what I fear. My biggest fear is we are playing games with something we do not even understand what the capabilities are.
Can I present a theory about that mission?
Well,
Well, right before
let me finish up on this. We're sending out all these frequencies and all these pulses throughout the universe, and somewhere out in that universe, there is a probability. I have not ever seen aliens. I can't say there are aliens, but I cannot say there are not aliens. But I do believe proportionally that due to the magnitude of the numbers that are out beyond this earth, there is a possibility somewhere out there, there is a life form that our frequencies are going to affect. And somewhere there's going to be some pissed off alien out there that is going to come back and kick our behind. And I hope it isn't in my time. I hope there are people like
Well,
Dylan and you who are informed and have some concept of how to make peace with these people. I didn't do it, people. I didn't do it. It was my grandpa, and I have no responsibility for what they did. Well, guess what? You killed off half a world somewhere,
um,
and there's
we're
no concept.
but Billy, we're assuming that there are other life forms. I agree there are. I think it's impossible for there not to be. But going off of that assumption, uh, you're right. But we, like you said, you haven't seen one, so you can't say there are any. But you can't say there aren't.
Well, so my belief is, according to theorists, there is a inverted dimension out there. where everything is opposite of us.
When I'm not too familiar with the theory of uh, dimensions, but it does sound plausible that there are other dimensions.
I mean, it's only a belief. I'd like to someday be able to make a real theory out of it.
I'd
But
love.
there's a possibility. There's a possibility. There are inverted dimensions out there. Where we go left. This person on the other side of this dimension is going right.
Mm-hmm.
What is good for us is bad for them. What's bad for them is good for us, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. So
out there, and I believe this concept goes. You take a right turn and jump up, and this other guy comes out and he takes a left turn, and he jumps up, and on the inverse of him, the other guy went down, and he's still making a left turn, and on the other side, this other guy went just the opposite. All of a sudden, you got these multiple combination of dimensions, and it's endless.
mm-hmm.
It's endless. The possible that there's a dimension out there doing this and that and the other. I don't know. I have to shake my head. But I know in the future that young people will look into that possibility.
Oh, with the Mars mission, can I present a theory? I have nothing to back it up with, or very little to back it up with, but it goes off of what you were saying about the frequencies.
Well, Dylan, before you do, I have no idea what your theory is about. We haven't talked about it off air, but just
No.
remember, if it has something to do with what Earth is, or like what the people of Earth are doing before they go out, just remember that if it has to do with any dangers, this is all experiments. We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Just to put that out there.
It's not.
Exactly.
It's about people's heart and the moon vibrating on a similar frequency. Is there any science behind that in your eyes, Billy?
Absolutely. Every planet has its own resonance. It makes a difference in the gravitational pull. It makes a difference in its magnetic capability, how fast it's turning. I mean, everything's a matter of frequency.
So,
no matter where you go.
Would it be plausible to think that the moon and people's hearts vibrate on a similar frequency?
Does the heart? Of course it would. There's a difference in gravitational. Your heart differences in gravitational systems would change the heart in itself. Not just electrical, but the physical capabilities of your muscles change with the difference in gravity. So yeah, there's going to be all sorts of illusions to happen.
So, based on that theory, the heart vibrates on the same or similar frequencies to the moon. That would make traveling to Mars impossible because it's out of the moon's range.
Well, the human body has a way of adapting.
Could it adapt in a short amount of time, though?
That's the question: is how much time does it take? That's what all these things with Space Lab have to do with, is trying to maintain number one, the physical fitness while in another gravitational force. We're never absolutely without gravity.
So,
there is always some association to gravity from our planet or the moon or from another planet, or gravitational pull from the sun. There's always some form of gravity out there. It's just how much.
Chris, does this theory make sense with you, or is it just us?
In a way, it does. The whole moon and the frequency matching with people, I do not understand that one bit, but the rest makes sense. Even the part where he was saying that there's always gravitational pull. That's why if you ever see videos of people in space that appear to have no gravity, The only reason why there's no gravity is because of the speed that they're traveling at.
Well, the theory was actually presented to me by a friend in Australia. He says that I forget, it was presented to me a long time ago, but he was talking about how he's met people whose hearts, they claim, were affected when when the Earth was further, or when their area of the moon. I'm
Well,
butchering this theory.
Well, the reason why this instantly doesn't make sense is because if the moon is a little bit further away and it disrupts something with the heart, that would have already been proven false because humans have traveled to the moon and to space much closer to the moon.
I'm getting a phone call. Can I take another break? I apologize. I don't
well,
know.
well, just mute out for a while.
Well,
It's, you know,
I'm
me and
host.
Billy could still talk.
I'm hosting the call, so if I'm muted, then
Just mute
both
your
of
mic.
you will be muted. I'll have
Okay.
to put the call on hold to call him back.
Alright, whatever.
I'm sorry.
Oh, he's hooked up to his computer.
Yeah. Be back in 5. Hello, we are back. Chris, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Billy, are you with me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to take a phone call. It was with a friend. So we were discussing the vibrations or the frequencies and gravity, or the frequencies in space,
Okay,
correct?
correct. Let me make an effort here to show you something. On every long distance space shot we have done, there has been a readjustment to frequencies used in order to maintain communications with the craft, whether it be voice communications or digital communications. There is a change in frequency every time there is a change in gravitational pull
Chris,
of the onboard electronics.
Chris, can you tell your friends to only put serious questions in there?
I've already told them,
Be-
but
because Jason
they
just
who?
Jason or Josen just asked if it would be possible to flip someone from the moon.
No, gee.
That
The,
was probably one of those jokes about how it changes your heart
it
because
it doesn't change it. It just affects the frequency, which would disrupt it. In fact,
exactly. But that brings me to the point before you had to leave for your phone call. It was brought up that you were saying that somebody was affected by this. Maybe the moon moved a little bit. I don't know, something like that. But if people have been out in the orbit extremely close to Earth, if not, or I mean, extremely close to the moon, if not onto the moon, wouldn't that probably kill them if it just
um,
affected somebody seriously on Earth?
oh no, because the problem occurs. I think at least I didn't get to talk to the guy who had the problems, but remember, I'm just theorizing here. But I don't think it would unless you were too far from it. Because when you get further away, wouldn't the frequency get disrupted even further?
Well, what you're saying would sounds like it would be a positive or negative situation. Positive would be too much if you move too close to the moon. So there would have probably had to been how to say it, like a defect if
Hmm.
they went too close, and if they went too far, there would be a similar defect.
Oh, the
But if they move close to the moon and there's nothing, then if they move further away from the moon, there should be nothing either. But I don't even know where
well,
the theory of the moon having to do with our hearts have
well,
come into place.
because
There's different gravitational pull the closer you get to the moon. You start coming into the influence of the moon's gravitational force.
and that will affect your heart. The reason this theory was even mentioned was because in record in record the heart vibrates at the same frequency as the moon. So my theory was the moon affected it because if they vibrate at the same frequency, based on what we're theorizing here, then wouldn't they have a connection?
Well, we're assuming that our heart is at that frequency on the Earth. When we come to the moon's influence of its frequency, all life form frequencies change with that. The the question is that why they do orbitals on before they make an attempt to land on the moon or any other thing? Is there an adjustment of frequencies that has to go through instead of wham bam and into that? If there was an abrupt change like that, I think there would be a massive chance of not making that life form live through it.
Yeah, it's
Every time
possible.
we've made a commitment to go to another planet or to the moon or take a look at this out in outer space, there has been always an adjustment time on the approach. to slow down, to gauge yourself. And I think the commitment there is to make adjustments to electronic frequencies, because no matter what mass you approach, anything that's out there will have a gravitational pull to it. An asteroid has its own low gravitational pull. As you approach it,
And its own frequency.
It will change the frequency that's between you and it. As your distance closes, there's a difference in frequency change there. And if you make an abrupt move into that, there's no chance for adaptation, whether it be electronics or life form.
Well,
there has to be a gradual inclination.
My theory makes a few assumptions about things, but I figure at least if there's a chance of that being possible, when traveling to Mars like they want to be impossible due to it being too far, based on my theory.
My propagation is that going to Mars is a chance by itself. I mean, just the lack of communications, the lack of knowledge. We've only gained knowledge from very few prototypes that have been there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were mechanical. And they were set at a preset determination of what they were going to do when they got there. And then when there was fault found, there was communications devised to make interpretations or changes in the menu. And even that has faulted so many times.
Right.
And they don't discuss that with the pilgrim out here, you know. They don't discuss it with John Doe Public of what really it entails that something went wrong or why it went down for a while. It's a matter that they lose communications with this instrument, and they have to make adjustments of either frequency or phasing of equipment or a detachment from the programmed situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Kind of getting out of my line, Phyllis.
That's okay.
I mean, we were talking about Haarp, and now we're talking about space rides. Boy, what a thrill is this?
Well, it was linked with the whole frequency thing.
And you know, that's the truth. That's our network. We get off topic all the time, but we still give some useful information out.
Well, we came across some thought there, that's for sure. Everybody's got their eyebrow raised up, hand on their knees, thumping their leg, going, "What's he talking about? What's he talking about?" I don't know, fellas. I don't know everything. I never claimed to know everything.
No, nobody knows everything. It's okay.
I don't think that's a possibility for anybody to know everything. But someday there will be some computer out there or some simulation of a computer that will possibly know everything. But that's an assumption.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we're making a few assumptions here, but
yeah, well, make this assumption: within a crystal is an unlimited amount of area to stored memory.
So, Billy, can we start wrapping up and maybe do a part 2 later? We've been going for almost 3 hours, and typically by 3 hours we start to lose people.
Oh, you lost me after the first hour. What are you talking about?
Right, but we started to lose our listeners.
I mean, the poor listeners are sitting out there. What's he talking about? That isn't what he started talking about. Now he's talking about this and that and the other. Oh my gosh! Yes, I have to agree. 3 hours is a long time, and I have to tell you, the mistake is we have to go for part 3.
Part. Oh, first we got to do part 2.
We just did part 2.
This is part 1.
No, we did one earlier, didn't we?
No.
Dylan.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to you, but did you at least read over the comment that you put in your YouTube comment section?
No.
There's no comments.
It's on the side for the live. You said, "LOL, maybe." We can't speak on that because we've never been to the moon.
Well, he says that he believes the heart affects your emotion, and that if he was from the moon, that he was asking if it was still possible to love someone from the moon. I can't speak on your emotion on the moon because I've never been there.
But you said that we've never been to the moon. It sounded like you're saying humanity has never been to the moon.
Oh, we've. I meant the 3 of us.
All right, because they were all talking in chat and they were going, "What is this guy thinking that humanity has never made it to the moon?"
No, we as.
Well,
I hate to break it to you, but 1969 we sort of did that.
Yeah, we did, and I'm sure we did it
gentlemen,
earlier.
Believe it or not, there's a conspiracy theory out there saying that was fake.
That's only the first landing. There's
the Australian that presented the theory to me is one of those people. I'd love to have him on to discuss that, actually.
Oh.
All right. Well, we've been on here for almost 3 hours. We covered on countless theories about Haarp. Well, it all ties into one large theory, but several.
Well, gentlemen, I have to tell you, it's endless what we can talk about when it comes to Haarp.
Can we do a part 2 where we discuss more?
Like I said, we did one this morning, did we not?
We did not.
Oh, I thought we did.
No, we had
That was just us talking about it, so you would have.
Oh, you guys fooled me.
We didn't fool you. We didn't do a thing.
They're pulling a joke on me, people. Okay, they're pulling my leg. I have to laugh with you. Okay.
All right.
Let's call it a day, fellas. And anytime you want to, we can come in here and rap with you all.
Billy, thank you for coming on. This has been a very interesting show.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, and thanks for sharing your theories. They definitely got me thinking. They were really in depth on almost every part of it.
And don't just take our word for it on these different things. The most important part about finding the truth is to find it yourself.
Well, when we come back, I'd like to talk about the research that I'm doing in reference to these wind farms.
What are the wind farms? Give us a sneak peek.
Windmills. They contribute to the harping system and the activation of chemtrails or cheming atmosphere, and how the super vacuum electron tube works to make an amplifier.
You see what?
It's out there, fellas. It's out there, but it's real.
Dylan,
leave it.
Chris, you shouldn't have.
The next time we get on, we can talk about this.
Yeah, next time we can talk with this. But I enjoyed listening to this. It really got me thinking.
As
me to bring up my own points and try to get answers. This was the first time I've heard about somebody who was knowledgeable on the topic and the conspiracy. So this was a great learning session for me. I've learned a lot, and hopefully I'll be able to use these. And maybe one day I'll become an expert on this topic.
And you are the only victim of MKUltra to ever give me the chance to interview you. I've talked to 3 or 4, and they've all jumped away at the last second. We were literally about to go live, and they jumped away. And I never saw them again.
I will tell you, Kathy O'Brien and Mark Phillips are the same way. If they don't do it on their own, if they're questioned, they step back because it's hard to trust anybody out there if you've been in our shoes. I mean, we can't trust our dog. Think about that. I can't trust my own dog.
I think there are some things you can trust. I've never been in your position, so I can't speak for that, but...
Off my leg, Fifi! Off my leg!
Alright, Billy, thank you for coming on. Chris, thanks for staying. Alright, this is the Truth Speaks Network. We hope to be back very soon with another show. Until then, goodbye.